Today on CityCast Pittsburgh. The Steel City is hiring a new police chief. There are 3 finalists, and if you've lived here for a while, you probably know the names of 2 of them, Larry Scurato and Jason Lando. But one would be new to the burg. And his past, well, it's not the sort of thing you really want to hear before he even gets in the door. It's Tuesday, April 11th. I'm Megan Harris, and here's what Pittsburgh's talking about.
We went through the last of the finalists. It's been dwindled down to a certain number, and we met with all of them. And within the next 2 weeks, we will reveal who the next chief is going to be.
All right. So can you tell us how many finalists there are?
We're just going to say finalists.
That was Mayor Ed Gainey last week talking to Kevin Gavin on WESA's The Confluence. A few days later, WPXI shared this.
With a Channel 11 News exclusive, sources telling Channel 11 that the mayor's choice for the new police chief of Pittsburgh has a troubled past.
Ryan Lee resigned from his last job after a number of violent allegations.
Ryan Lee was the chief of police in Boise, Idaho. And lucky us, we have a sister show there. I'm with Frankie Barnhill, the lead producer over at CityCast Boise. I love that y'all spotted this news before we even knew about it.
Hey, Megan. Yeah, excited to be on CityCast Pittsburgh. It's a first, so.
Did you think that you would ever be talking about the Steel City?
I don't think I ever foresaw this, but I'm thrilled that it's happening, although maybe not around this news. But I'm here to help break it down.
I'm grateful for you, truly. So help me understand. Lee resigned from his job as the Boise police chief in September of 2022, so last year, in a scandal where your mayor had to ask him to resign. What was it about him? Was he always a lightning rod as the police chief?
You know, I wouldn't say so. Certainly not at the beginning. Things fell apart a couple years in, but at the beginning, our mayor said, quote, he's the right person for the time that we find ourselves in for our community. This is back in July of 2020, a very heightened moment in policing in America.
That would have been right after George Floyd,
exactly,
and right after the pandemic started.
Yes, so. Yeah, the height of all kinds of things. So it took a couple years for some scandals to surface at the department, but at first there was a lot of enthusiasm for Chief Lee and for what he might bring to the Boise Police Department.
Well, so how did he become the police chief then?
So he was among some finalists,
Not unlike our process.
Not unlike your process, exactly. And he was selected, I think the final, another finalist was maybe from Austin or something like that. But he originally came from the Portland Police Department. And he had been there for, I think, about 20 years. So had a long history of policing, moved up in the ranks in Portland. And then when he came to Boise, it was in the midst of a lot of different questions around funding of the police. He was sworn in actually just a few days after a Black Lives Matter protest outside our city hall where actual Nazis showed up and got violent with protesters. So it was just a very heightened moment. And he came in, had a presence of saying, hey, I'm here to reassure you about what this police department is and what it can be. I want to listen to people, and I want to make positive change within the department. That was kind of what he was saying, and our mayor seemed to be aligned with him on that. He also did say things like he wanted to create a public dashboard of info on police with when police use force in the city, to have some kind of transparent dashboard that people could access online, including also like how the department spends money. So he had some initiatives. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I read that he was a Coast Guard veteran and had some expertise on crowd control tactics. I can see how that would be a good and maybe not so good thing going into that specific summer. It sounds like he was trying to be a reformer, so I guess what went wrong?
Yeah. Oh, gosh. So like I said, he seemed to be wanting to hear from the public and to have conversations with different minority groups in Boise. I will say there was one time in his role when police shot a member of Boise's Somali Bantu refugee community. And this person, he was hospitalized for months. And it was, very traumatic for that particular community. And Lee he did kind of a dance, because the main problem with that particular shooting, or it was one of the things that was so upsetting for folks in the community, was that the police who shot him, it was in a moment where he was accused of basically kidnapping a teenager, is what it seemed like.
The person who was shot was accused of that.
Correct. And so that was the circumstance, or what police say. Well, the police didn't have their body cams on. So there were calls for body cam footage be released. Well, there was no footage to be released. And Lee kind of, stepped around that, or tried to talk in a way that was placating the community. But in the end, I mean, this was while he was in his tenure. This was a year into him being police chief. So that's one incident that I can think of that he had backlash from the community. But then there was probably more backlash that happened internally than from the community, I would say, with him.
Well, so how did he handle that backlash, any criticism that was, being talked about, I guess, either in the press or internally, now that you have that, hindsight?
Yeah. So the big thing that happened that really spurred on and accelerated the fact that he actually was asked to resign by our mayor was that in October 2021, he was doing a training. It was some kind of like morning meeting with a group of officers. And at one point, he called a sergeant up to the front and did not warn him, according to a tort claim that came later, that he put him in a neck restraint. And to demonstrate a neck restraint, now
you're like holding your hands around your neck. So you
basically
mean physical combat style something.
Yes, exactly. And what was interesting is, neck restraints were banned after George Floyd in Boise. That was one of the reactions that our police department had. So he was doing another, like a sleeper hold, basically. That spurred on a lot of issues, because as in the claim it said, he put one hand on his forehead and pulled his head back and down, was how it was referenced. This officer, this sergeant, alleged that he broke his neck.
Oh man.
Yeah. So an HR investigation ensued. Later, there was a tort claim that was filed.
Did y'all know about that in Boise in real time?
No, it was kind of a slow trickle of information. And that's when we're talking about somebody who, cares about transparency, this is, and according to officers who were present in that meeting, he said something kind of offhandedly, maybe jokingly, it was interpreted as, or are you going to file a complaint against me now after that demonstration? So
yes, apparently the answer was yes.
The answer was yes, indeed. And the sergeant filed not only a tort claim, but also an HR complaint against him.
What came of those complaints? Were charges ever filed or anything like that?
There was an investigation that was done by prosecutors in another county in Idaho to look into this. And our police Office of Accountability also, they referred it to another county in order to look at it a little bit closer with some external eyes. And basically that particular prosecutor or county prosecutor said, we don't think criminal charges should go forward, but this is incredibly serious and it should not be taken lightly, was basically the gist of the final report. And it wasn't the only time that former police chief Ryan Lee faced criticism within the department and other critiques and complaints to our Office of Accountability.
Do you know what the nature of those other complaints were, or how many, or over what period? I mean, those are so messy.
Yeah, it was a mix. It was over probably about a year period, and there were nine in total. About three of them included one was the Sergeant Rush, and his claim that his neck was broken in that demonstration. But in addition to that, concerns about Lee's management style, whether or not he had some favoritism, how he disciplined, how he equipment selection, some concerns about hiring practices and how promotions happened. So a range of them, but there were some whispers around City Hall that his leadership style was something that didn't necessarily make people feel like they were being heard in the department.
So all of these complaints and the allegation of the broken neck, were those the final straw that, led to his resignation?
Yeah, ultimately it did. The mayor, who again was part of the process to select him in 2020, asked him to resign after some dogged reporting in Boise led to more information about the nature of the complaints, and questions were being raised about his leadership style. And he wasn't fired, but he was asked to resign, which is the next step close to being fired. And that's where things stood. So we are without a police chief. We're currently looking for
wow,
one.
that was last fall.
Indeed, yeah. Yep.
Oh my gosh. So all these bad things, in fairness, did any of the transparency or the database or any of that real-time stuff you were talking about, did it ever come to fruition?
You know what? As far as I know, the database never happened. That dashboard. I'm not sure why. I don't have many details on that, but that was something that never came about. I think that it was a tricky time. It was a height of COVID. And so meeting in person was a challenge. He did reach out to different communities. Like I said, that the Somali Bantu community, after that police involved shooting, he did reach out to that community, and he's spent time with other minority groups in Boise. But, usually in response to something.
Yeah, gotcha. Well, and to be clear, Pittsburgh has not confirmed. City officials have not said for sure that this is the guy, that the offer has been made. It's being reported, it's being talked about, which is why we wanted to come to you, Frankie, and get some more insights. But I don't know. What do you think? If you lived in Pittsburgh right now, would you want him serving your community again?
It is a hard call, Megan. I mean, I think that there's some really hard questions for the city of Pittsburgh to ask about what their leadership should be. And if you're similarly having issues with retaining and hiring officers like Boise does, perhaps that should be a consideration in this era. I think that there's a lot of questions to be asked. So I'm sure you'll be doing more of that if he is indeed selected for your city.
Frankie Barnhill is the lead producer of CityCast Boise. Thanks, Frankie.
Happy to do it, Megan.
Here's a little more news before you go. Pennsylvania Senator Bob Casey says he's running for re-election. I saw somewhere he's already our longest serving senator, and this would be a fourth 6-year term. Republicans Dave McCormick and Doug Mastriano have both expressed interest in challenging him. Remember, Dave is a former hedge fund manager who worked in the Bush administration. He ran for Fetterman's seat last year, but Dr. Oz beat him out in the primary. And Doug is a big Donald Trump guy. He ran and lost for governor last fall against now Governor Josh Shapiro. And if you have any chemicals you need to get rid of, the Pennsylvania Resources Council is holding a drive-through event at PPG Paint's arena this Saturday. So any leftover paint, cleaner, automotive fluid, pesticide, I know I've got a couple cans of gasoline that definitely need thrown away. You can sign up ahead of time and the link in our show notes, or check out today's Hey Pittsburgh newsletter for more information. That's all for today here on CityCast Pittsburgh. If you're liking the show, please tell someone, leave us a rating, 5 stars, a nice review, and subscribe to that newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Talk to you soon. I'm sorry, I put a gummy candy in my mouth the moment I turned this mic on.